In a season full of highs for the Detroit Lions, Week 15 was one to forget as a plethora of injuries and an offensive masterclass from Bills quarterback Josh Allen would be too much to overcome as the Lions dropped their first game since mid-September. All is not lost, however, as the Lions still have a chance at the NFC North title and the one seed headed into the playoffs. How will the Lions bounce back after suffering multiple season-ending injuries to key players? Let's discuss all that and more on this episode of Motor City Connected. So right away, just as per usual, what went well offensively? Obviously, in a game that saw a ton of points being scored, 90 total points in the game, the highest scoring game of the NFL so far this season. The Bills came out 48 to 42 on top. So Lions were still able to put up 42 points, and Jared Goff was kind of the catalyst behind all that. Jared Goff had a fantastic game, 494 yards, his highest passing total as a Lion, and he had 5 touchdowns. But again, that just wasn't enough to keep up with the high-powered Bills offense. But again, Jared Goff being able to put up these numbers and still have the ability to throw for 400 yards and 5 touchdowns is nice to see. Granted, we probably won't have to see that from him the rest of the regular season, but into the playoffs, the fact that we know he still has that ability to move the rock down the field with ease is a plus. It's a good sign, especially considering the injury to David Montgomery. I'll get more into that a little bit later. Still wanted to touch on just the offensive firepower that the team showed, especially in the second half. Amon-Ra St. Brown was electric, especially in the second half. He ended with 14 catches for 193 yards and a touchdown. I read somewhere also that he was battling food poisoning and still was able to put up 200 yards almost. So Amon-Ra, he had a very solid game. He struggled in the first half, had a fumble, had a drop or two, but overall, I thought that he played a pretty exceptional game, including that 66-yard touchdown reception in the third quarter. Sam Laporta, I thought, was more involved in this offense today. I think a lot of that had to do just with the lack of running attack that the Lions had and how they were, I mean, Jared Goff threw 59 passes. And so clearly we were trying to move the ball through the air. And Sam Laporta, he's a key piece of this offense, especially in this receiving core. He went for 7 catches and 111 yards. Obviously, this season, his role has been kind of smaller, more of a blocking tight end, more of a smoke and mirror guy, just because obviously after last year, a lot of teams have keyed in on him. They know how explosive he is. So it was good to see him kind of get back on track, regardless of the loss or not. Um, Moving on, Jahmyr Gibbs took over for David Montgomery. Like I said, David Montgomery has suffered a torn MCL, I believe, and he is now out for the season as he's going to undergo surgery, I'm sure, in the next few days here. But Gibbs, in his kind of takeover of that lead back role, he had 114 total yards and 2 touchdowns, one on the air, one on in the air, one on the ground. And again, I mean, this is going to be Jahmyr Gibbs' offense now with Demont out. So it's nice to see that, Jahmyr Gibbs was able to get involved in the passing game. I think he had 83 yards on 5 catches and a touchdown. But, 8 carries for 31 yards and a touchdown is not going to cut it on the ground. Again, this offense is not built to throw the ball 59 times in a game. They're just not. But when you're playing from behind, that's kind of the only option you have. So Jahmyr Gibbs, though, going into Chicago, headed into San Francisco and Minnesota to end the regular season, it'll be interesting to see kind of how he embodies that lead back role. We'll see if Craig Reynolds or Sione Vaki or some other guys get involved at the running back position. But as of right now, this is Jahmyr Gibbs' offense, and he's going to have to play the best football of his life. And I think he's up for the task. He's one of the most explosive players in the NFL. He's looked very, very good so far this year. And I'm excited to kind of see what he can do without another guy kind of breathing down their back or without splitting carries with somebody, barring any injury, of course. Um, Moving on, Tim Patrick. I like what he is in this offense. He knows his role. He knows he's not going to get 12 targets in a game, but he had 8 targets yesterday. He had 4 catches for 30 yards and a touchdown, and he's consistent. and he doesn't drop the ball very often. He has good hands, and he can get into the end zone. He's a long, tall receiver. He sits around 6'4", and yeah, he falls forward, gets first downs. He's a proven veteran. He's a solid piece for this team. I know him and Jared Goff, you can see it week by week. They become more and more comfortable. Tim Patrick was picked up off the practice squad earlier this season from the Broncos. And the Broncos, funny enough, upgraded Josh Reynolds from their practice squad and brought Tim Patrick down. So they kind of swapped roles with Josh Reynolds, who, as we know, was a Lion last year. And now Tim Patrick is on the Lions, and Josh Reynolds, I'm not really sure what he's been doing so far this year for the Broncos. Haven't really been paying a ton of attention, but it's probably safe to say that Tim Patrick has been as good, if not better, than Josh Reynolds was last year. Um, I know I always bring up this type of stat, but five different players caught at least four passes, and then six different players caught at least three. So clearly the ball distribution is not an issue. We are able to get it to seven different guys comfortably and know that they can make plays, including Dan Skipper, who had the touchdown catch. But yeah, I mean, nobody had more than one touchdown. Amon-Ra had one, Jahmyr Gibbs had one, Jamison Williams had one, Tim Patrick and Dan Skipper. Those are the five touchdown passes for Jared Goff. So clearly they can move the ball around. That's not an issue, even without losing Khalif Raymond and kind of having Sam Laporta take that secondary role as a weapon on this offense. We still know that any given day Sam Laporta can have an 100-yard game because he's that talented and that good. Um, Moving on, the last thing I wanted to talk about that went well on this offense, granted the passing game was much more effective due to playing from behind, but Goff was sacked a couple of times early, but protection was pretty solid in the second half. Jared Goff had a ton of time in the second half to find his guys. You never know if Buffalo is kind of playing a little softer up front, if they're only sending four rushers instead of blitzing like they were in the first half. But the protection, clearly there was an adjustment at halftime and they fixed it. But this will kind of go in what went wrong offensively, but we have to find a way to protect Jared Goff throughout the entire 60 minutes. It can't just be one half or the other, because we've seen how susceptible Goff is to fumbling the ball when he gets tackled, or when he gets sacked, or just kind of when he gets pressure in his face, he gets a little scared, gets a little jittery, makes bad throws. So you have to keep that pocket clean, and they did a great job in the second half, but definitely some stuff we're going to need to clean up on that offensive line. Frank Ragnow has obviously battled injuries his entire career, but he's definitely been struggling, and we're not used to seeing that from him. So it was a good sign to see the adjustments that they made. But heading into the playoffs and down the stretch of this year, this offensive line is going to have to be better, or other defensive coordinators are going to send pressure and send the house consistently, and that's not what we want, especially with just the injuries that we've seen. We need to be on schedule, and when Jared Goff gets sacked, we get behind schedule, and that's not ideal for this offense. Moving on, what went wrong offensively? Unfortunately, this is a longer list than what went well, and that just has to do a lot with injuries. David Montgomery going down with a season-ending knee injury it's less than ideal, and that's how you have to look at it. There's nothing you can do about it. It's not what you want to see. But the good thing is, and the silver lining is, you still have a guy named Jahmyr Gibbs, who is one of the most explosive running backs in the entire league and can take over as that lead back any given night. And that's what he's going to have to do. I don't know. He's not going to get 100% of the carries, so it's going to have to be Craig Reynolds and Sione Vaki, hopefully kind of chipping in and alleviating some of those snaps from Jahmyr Gibbs. Because, yeah, we know how potent this offensive attack is, and I don't think Demont going down is going to we're not going to get away from that. Craig Reynolds is a good downhill runner. Sione Vaki has shown them the ability to catch the ball out of the backfield and be kind of like a Jahmyr Gibbs. So hopefully both those guys are ready, and they embody the next man up mentality. Again, I know it's a cliche, but it's just how it has to be this year. With the injuries up to around, I think, 16 players on IR. So not ideal whatsoever, but again, guys are going to have to continue to play hard, and this team's still 12-2 and has clinched a playoff spot, so this season is far from over. There's going to have to be some guys that maybe haven't played a ton this year that are going to step into much bigger roles these next couple weeks. The run game in general was just non-existent. I think it was the lowest rushing total of the year, only 48 total rush yards as a team. And, that's just not great. That's for a team that relies on the run game to set up their pass game and set up the play action as much as the Lions do. When you can't move the ball on the ground, you're going to lose ball games. I mean, that's just as simple as that. 48 total rushing yards as a team is not going to do it, especially when you have two talented running backs like David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. You have to find a way to be able to establish that run game, and the Lions weren't. I mean, early on in this game, they were down 14-0, and the run game was kind of non-existent from there on out. Um, More things that just weren't great offensively. Obviously, again, we scored 42 points, so you can't be too mad. But yes, there was some areas here or there that could have gone better, and you might have won that game. And I think one of those big moments was the Amon-Ra St. Brown fumble. I think that was a huge momentum killer. And then obviously at the end of the first half, uh, Amon-Ra St. Brown was wide open. Jared Goff threw it a little bit low, but St. Brown usually comes away with that. He knows when it hits his hands, he should catch it. And he dropped that ball, which resulted in a Jake Bates missed field goal, and the game was tied at that point. So just moments where you need big plays, and then it didn't happen. And again, we're 12-2. We haven't lost a game since mid-September. Things are going to go poorly, and it's about how you adjust to them. And I think in the second half, regardless of being down by as much as they were and just, having zero momentum whatsoever, they still held close and they still made it a game. But those are just two moments. Obviously, many other things went wrong. There could have been blocking schemes that were screwed up and whatnot, but those just stood out and were highlighted throughout the game. And yeah, I mean, St. Brown, we know he's great. We know he's so sure-handed, but when you're gonna have a fumble, you're gonna have a drop every once in a while, and it's how you respond. And I think St. Brown responded very, very well in this game specifically. So we'll see. I know he was a little bit sick, so I don't want to pile on him too much, but got to be better, and he will. It's Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's the king of improvement. So more things that didn't go well. Frank Ragnow was just getting bullied by Ed Oliver on the interior. Ed Oliver, if you don't know who that is, he is a force to be reckoned with on that Buffalo Bills defensive front. He is a man amongst boys, and he's pretty young too. He was drafted in the same class as TJ Hawkinson. He was actually the pick after TJ Hawkinson, which is a little bit of a bummer because it would be very nice to have Ed Oliver lined up on that interior. But, not going to look too into that, but definitely not fun to see a guy that you could have potentially drafted kind of go off. I think he had his most pressures in a game so far in his career. He was very, very, he created havoc all game long. So, props to him, but Frank Ragnow definitely got manhandled. Ed Oliver got the best of Ragnow, and, hopefully Ragnow will look at that and fix those mistakes, as I know that he can do and has done in the past. Jake Bates he's not going to be perfect on the year from 50 plus from field goal. That's just never going to happen. But he missed that field goal pretty badly. It was shanked to the left, a good 20 feet from the goalpost. So obviously, in a game where field goals were pretty important, and we knew how important points were, he might have gotten a little bit nervous and a little bit tight. But it's a good thing he got that miss out of the way, and it wasn't in the NFC Championship or something where he's missing his first 50-plus yard field goal of the year. But again, Jake Bates has been incredible all year. Don't want to pile up too much on him, but got to be able to make field goals. And I don't know if it was a problem with the hold, a problem with the snap, what it was, a problem with just the entire process of the kick. But yeah, that's not going to cut it, and it's got to be better than that. And then just kind of to wrap up what didn't go well offensively, just the start of the game was just too slow. I think falling behind early is not this team's DNA, and that happened, and it was backs against the wall the entire game. And then Dan Campbell kind of gets more pressured to make those fourth down calls and go for it, and he made a mistake with 12 minutes to go after the Lions cut the lead to 10. He tried to go for the onside kick. Buffalo was able to recover it, return it almost to the end zone. They got down to like the 5 yard line and they scored the next play. And then it extended it to 17 points again with about 10 minutes to go. So I get it. Your defense has not shown the ability to stop Josh Allen and that Bills offense all game long, but with 12 minutes to go down 10, when your offense is clicking, you got to take the risk of maybe getting a turnover or you get a three and out from the Bills offense. Time, it wasn't a factor at that point. Maybe if there's 4 minutes to go, you onside there, but 12, I think, was just too much time. And you live and die by the sword. Dan Campbell has shown in the past to be able the ability to win games because of his decision making and lose games. And that was one of those games where I don't know necessarily if it lost the game or had that big of an impact, but it was definitely something that I think, you got to be smarter than that, and you have to know situational awareness better as a head coach in the NFL. Moving on, I don't want to dwell too much on it because, again, control what you can control, and that was one thing that we couldn't control. We were down all game. We were gonna have to get an onside regardless. So, and that's not easy. I think there's only been about three or four recovered. It gets recovered at about like a 6% rate in the NFL. So it's not very likely you're gonna get that. But again, you got to take those chances when you clearly can't stop another team defensively. Speaking of defensively, what went well? Very, very short list, unfortunately. A couple of things I wanted to highlight. Brian Branch led the team with 15 total tackles. I believe that's his most tackles on the year so far. Um, I don't know if it's necessarily all that great of an accomplishment to have your strong safety as your leading tackler. It just means that a lot of runs were getting to the second level, and that was the case. There was a lot of missed tackles on the interior, allowing James Cook and Ty Johnson for the Bills to move the ball 6-7 yards past the line of scrimmage before they were even touched. And that with that comes DBs having to tackle, and it's thank goodness we have Brian Branch who can make those tackles. But again, not ideal to have your safety have 15 tackles in a game and lead the team. Um, Kindle Vildor, he looked improved. I don't necessarily know if he is the long-term answer at corner with Carlton Davis going out to injury. I'll talk about that a little bit more on what went wrong defensively, but yeah, Vildor is going to have to step up. Khalil Dorsey is now out with a broken leg, and yeah, it's going to have to be rely on Kindle Vildor and Terrion Arnold and a lot of young, undersized corners, which again, not ideal, but next man up mentality. Kindle Vildor has experience playing in the playoffs, playing in high leverage situations, and he's going to have to continue to show improvement, or we're going to have to go with another option. But I thought he looked better yesterday, and he should be able to, he should be ready to go for the rest of the season. He's been playing consistent snaps with the injuries, kind of consistently all year, with Ennis Rakestraw going out, and then Carlton Davis was out one game. Now Carlton Davis is out for the year. So next man up mentality, and I think Kindle Vildor is going to surprise some people. Maybe not be an elite lockdown corner, but I think he's going to be more consistent than he was last year in the playoffs. Other than that, it was the worst defensive performance of the year. No sugarcoating it. And things are going to have to change quickly. And, now, not quickly, now. Things got to change today. And obviously, Aaron Glenn's a smart guy. Dan Campbell's a smart guy. That organization is doing it correctly. They are building their team correctly. And now it's time to make adjustments mid-season. And that's one thing that I think the Lions have had a little bit of struggles with on the coaching staff is just continue to make adjustments and continue to be the best possible team you can be every single week. But now, again, like I said, there's so many injuries. They're going to have to get different guys in different situations. So right now, the Lions are going to work for the first time this season, really. Obviously, the first 13 games or so, they were dialed in and doing the right things, but now this is where it really starts to get, you're in the thick of it. And as a defensive coordinator, this is less than ideal, like I've said a million times this episode, but, you know, Aaron Glenn, let's go show people why you deserve to be a head coach in the NFL, that you can take practice squad guys and still have a competent defense. And that kind of leads me into what went wrong defensively. We'll start with the season-ending injuries. Khalil Dorsey, he broke his leg. Aleem McNeil, I don't know what he did to his knee. I think it was a torn something. And then Carlton Davis, he injured his jaw, and he'll be out indefinitely as well. So we have to expect to play the rest of the season without Aleem McNeil and without Carlton Davis. Two of our top remaining defensive players are now unavailable. And that's great. But again, new guys are going to step up, and I think that Aaron Glenn is going to surprise some people with the adjustments he makes and kind of some of the lineups he throws out there with these just stacking and stacking injuries. Moving on, I don't want to dwell too much on things you can't really control. I want to talk about just throughout the game where I saw blunders and how you fix them. Run defense was a shell of what we're used to, and that's again not sugarcoating it. The run defense was atrocious. They had 197 total rushing yards on 5.8 yards per carry and 4 touchdowns. I think all 4 of those touchdowns, maybe 3 of them, were walk-ins. They weren't touched, and that's unacceptable. We're used to doing that to teams. Teams don't do that to us. That is not how a red zone, as good as the Lions has been all year, that's not how it's supposed to be operated. And you cannot have James Cook and Josh Allen just waltzing into the end zone for touchdowns because, I get it, they're a really, really good offense, but that's just, when you're too good for that. And you've shown this year you're too good, regardless of any injuries. Your defense is too good for that to happen. And, it's too good for that to be acceptable and that to be the norm heading forward. Red zone defense has been our strength, and it was atrocious on Sunday. It wasn't good. That kind of leads into the walk-in touchdowns. It felt like once the team got into the red zone, the first 12, 13 weeks of the season, I felt really good when other teams got into the red zone. I was like, okay, we're going to force them to a field goal or a turnover, or we're not going to let them score touchdowns. And that was not the case yesterday. By the second half, every time they crossed the 50-yard line, I knew they were going to score a touchdown. And a Super Bowl team, that's just not a Super Bowl team. So things got to change there. And to add on top of that, running backs not only killed us in the run game, but in the passing game as well. Ty Johnson, who former Lion, if you guys don't remember him, he played, I think, in like 2019, 2020, that era of Detroit Lions football. And he had a game. I think that this year he has, let's see, regular season, he has 275 receiving yards on the year. 114 of them came on Sunday. Ty Johnson had 114 yards on 5 catches for the Bills. That's unacceptable. I mean, the Bills just exploited mismatches all day long. Anytime a linebacker was matched up versus a running back, whether it was Ty Johnson, whether it was Delvin Cook, whether it was they have their third string running back still had a great game, Ray Davis. Every time there was a mismatch, every time you got Jack Campbell or you got Ben Neiman or you got Quan Alexander or any of those guys matched up one-on-one versus a running back, Josh Allen took advantage and, hit him in stride, and they were able to take it up the sideline or, gain 30, 40 yards and flip the field entirely in one singular play. And that was just unacceptable. Specifically on first down, it was ridiculous. Every single first down, the Bills got positive yardage, and not just positive yardage, but 5, 6, 7 yards a pop. And when you're in second and third, that is the perfect spot to be in as an offense, especially when you have Josh Allen as your quarterback. So that was really discouraging. No sacks on the day, also discouraging. Clearly, we know the sacks aren't coming now that Aiden Hutchinson's out. It's been a kind of a struggle this year, but they've at least gotten pressures, and Aleem McNeil and Zadarius Smith and Levi Onwuzurike and Josh Paschal have been able to get pressure on the quarterback and forced errant throws or, force the quarterback to run out of the pocket and throw it out of bounds. But that was not the case today. Every time that Josh Allen was pushed out of the pocket, he had an extra 10 seconds to throw to find a guy down the field. And it was just all day long. You could see every time Josh Allen was out of the pocket, that's where he's comfortable. And he was just picking us apart down the sideline and even in the middle of the field. So, again, just a lackluster performance on defense. I don't want to be too negative, but when games like yesterday happen, you gotta be able to objectively evaluate what went wrong, excuse me, and the defensive intensity was just not there, and I think that was a key contributor in this loss. The physicality we're accustomed to seeing was nowhere to be found. And I've written down, you're not going to win a Super Bowl if you can't contain the quarterback. And that has been the case for not only this year, but years in the past. And Aaron Glenn has not shown the ability to adjust towards a running quarterback. And it has been the downfall of this team. Last year against Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, they destroyed us. And then this game, Josh Allen had a really, really good game on the ground. Baker Mayfield on the ground in the game in September when the Lions lost also torched us with his legs. So, again, Aaron Glenn has to go into film and see what is going wrong and has to make an adjustment. Somebody like me cannot tell you what that adjustment is, unfortunately, but I have an idea, and Aaron Glenn is such a smart defensive coordinator, and we've seen what he can do on the fly. He's got to make an adjustment on mobile quarterbacks because it's getting bad. It's getting ugly. And if you face the Bills again in the Super Bowl, they're going to do exactly what they did, and their blueprint is going to be the same unless you can figure out ways to stop the run game. Um, Continuing on, still more stuff to go on what went wrong defensively. Sorry for the negativity, but I got to talk about it. The last thing I wanted to say was you got to figure out a way to get back to bend don't break heading into playoffs, especially with the amount of players on IR. Throughout this entire season, I've preached how great this team has been in the red zone and how teams might be able to put up a couple yards here and there, but at the end of the day, this defense is so good at forcing you into field goals and making you uncomfortable and forcing you into turnovers and making and having to make decisions, and that just wasn't the case on Sunday. And the good thing is we head into some more games, some more winnable games, and those are some things you can work on. So you got to be better in the red zone. I think the past 3 weeks, that second half of the Bears game on to now, the red zone defense has been kind of a shell of its former self, and it's up to Aaron Glenn to get back to it. And the last thing I have written down for what went wrong was just it's going to be an uphill battle now, and it's as simple as that. And this is going to be a really big indicator of whether or not Aaron Glenn is ready to be a head coach in the NFL. We're going to see what he's made of. We're going to see what his strategy is for these last 3 regular season games, considering all the injuries. And it's going to be interesting. This team's already has a playoff spot, so it might, it's going to be beneficial to see where they struggle and what they need to fix in the offseason. So this is a big learning moment for us, and hopefully they can come out and come out in Chicago next week and play some competent defense like they did in the first half against Chicago on Thanksgiving. So, Aaron Glenn, I love you, man. I obviously am going to be critical, but I have faith in what he's able to do, and I have faith that he's going to make changes and things are going to, not look like they did on Sunday for the rest of this season. And then I just wanted to touch on, before I wrap it all up, what's next for this team, what's next, what the schedule, just what's next. Have to find a way to move forward. Next man up is such a cliche, and I say it all the time, but it's vastly important to the rest of the season. It's probably the most important variable left on this team is how they're going to fill those injuries. And everyone in the organization knows it, and they all know they have to be on the same page and they have to be prepared, top to bottom, whether you're the last player on the practice squad or you're Jared Goff. Every single player has to be ready, and I know that that is the case. I saw earlier today Jerry Jacobs, who's been a longtime practice squad player for the Lions. He tweeted, something along the lines of, the best players, the best people, they are always prepared. So when someone does call on them, they're not scrambling to figure it out. They already know what they're doing. So I'm assuming that means Jerry Jacobs is going to get brought up for the practice squad. Another guy who has postseason experience last year didn't play all that well, but it's a new year, and hopefully he's a new player and he's worked on his craft, and the coaching staff can get him right. Again, the coaching staff, the players, the front office, the fans, everybody's got to be locked in and on the same page more than ever right now. This is the adversity that I hadn't seen the Lions face so far this year. Obviously, you lose early on in the year, but then you go on a 12-game win streak. There has not been any adversity, and this is where it starts. It sucks that it's at the end of the year. It sucks that it's 3 weeks before playoffs. Nothing you can do to control it. Got to continue to move forward. And again, I've said it 5 times. I'll say it 100 more. Control what you can control. And then I'll do a little preview of next week. Heading into Chicago, not going to be easy. We saw their fight on Thanksgiving. We saw they're young, tenacious. They have a good defense. Their quarterback, Caleb Williams, is starting to kind of figure it out in his rookie year. It's going to be a real test. We'll see if this team can go on the road and win with a depleted defense, especially considering the loss they had this past week. It's going to be, now this team's battle tested. And I think that it's going to pay dividends. I know a lot of people are looking at it as a negative, but I'm looking at it as a positive. And they're going to go and they're going to punch Chicago in the mouth as they should have on Thanksgiving. But now they know there is some holes. There is some things that we have to work on. We're not going to be a world beater. We're not the 2007 New England Patriots that are going to go undefeated in the regular season and run through the playoffs. No, we're just not. They're not that team. They're good. They're one of the best teams in the NFL, but you got to find a way to separate yourself, especially with these injuries. And I think that this Bears game is a good opportunity to do that. And then the keys to victory for this Bears game contain Caleb Williams. That's going to be the key for pretty much every single team we play this entire year, is ability to contain the quarterback. And something that I've noticed the past couple weeks is the turnover battle hasn't been won. And we got to get back to that ball hawking safety we know and love from Kirby and Brian. We know we know how good they are in coverage, and neither of them have had an interception in a couple weeks now. Obviously, offenses are kind of trying to avoid those two guys, but again, we need some turnovers. We need to fly around on defense and bring back that energy that was present early on in the year. Run game's got to be better. We know Goff can move the ball through the air, but without the threat of play action, this team is just not the same. It's just not. This week's gonna be a huge gut check. If we can move the ball on the ground, we're gonna win. And if we can't, it might be another pretty close game like it was on Thanksgiving. So there's a lot of variables that go into how this team's gonna find success now because of the injuries and because of the adversity. And I think that run game has always been vastly important, but now it's even more. And got to be ready. And I think that Craig Reynolds and Sione Vaki are gonna do their best job to relieve Jahmyr Gibbs. But at the end of the day, it's gonna rely on Jahmyr Gibbs being the explosive playmaking running back that we know and love. That's pretty much all I have. Last thing I want to leave everybody with is there's a lot of people giving up on this team because of injuries. If you go on Twitter, you go on any social media, there's a lot of negativity right now. And I think that's ridiculous. This team has given us so much to cheer about. Because of injuries, we're going to stop. That doesn't make any sense to me. This team is never going to quit. And as fans, we have to back them up, especially right now. They need our support. They need our love, and they need the excitement that we've brought back to the Detroit Lions organization we're the catalyst. As the fans, we are the catalyst of this team, and we are the ones that give them the juice to go out and punch everybody in the mouth. And right now, instead of backing up and, giving up on the season, let's just support them because who knows? There's a lot of football left to be played this year, and everybody suffers injuries. That's just how football goes. So let's look at this as an opportunity to play through adversity, control what you can control, and let's start up another win streak. People are acting like we didn't just go on an 11-game win streak. We can do it again. Let's go on a 6-game win streak. Let's win these last 3 games, get the 1 seed, win 3 games in the playoffs, and then you're the Super Bowl champion. So let's start up another win streak. Let's keep the faith. No negativity. Team needs us right now. That's all I've got. Let's go stay undefeated on the road this year by taking down the Bears on Sunday. Everyone, just take a deep breath. Everything is going to be okay. I promise. This has been Motor City Connected with Kyle Garrison. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.